Welcome along, my aspiring allies. Thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Today, I am joined by Jim Thorp, and Jim is a health coach and workplace stress expert. And we, unsurprisingly, spoke all about workplace stress. We talked about the things that might be triggering it, where it might be showing up in your workplaces, and also for employees, which i.e. is us, in our homes and how we bring those into work with us. Jim has some really great solutions and ideas for you to be thinking about how to combat that. And he brings some really insightful discussion around thinking about workplace stress from a holistic, full kind of human experience. So it really was a fantastic conversation. So you know the drill. Sit back, relax, and get comfortable in whichever way works best for you. And please welcome Jim Thorp to the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Yeah, I
Have you
don't
put
know
the
how I'm going to.
recording out as well, by the way, just so I know if
It
I'm
is recording, yes.
in terms of visual as well?
Yes.
Right, okay, that's
Yes.
fine.
So it goes out audio only on Spotify and Apple, and then I have a
Yeah.
YouTube channel that I put them on.
Okay, fine.
Although
Cool.
it takes me longer to get things uploaded to YouTube.
Yeah, I can
Talk
imagine. Yeah.
perfect segue into stress, right? The amount of time it takes to get something uploaded onto YouTube
Yeah.
drives me potty.
Yes. Yeah.
I sometimes have to just leave my Mac on, like running into the night, and so I'll go off and
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
dinner and stuff, and just let it do its thing.
Yeah. No, it's. I think when I upload videos to it, if I use iMovie, it tends to upload quicker. I think it converts it to a different format than
Ah.
if you just try and upload a raw document. I don't know. Don't take my word for that.
Yeah, people keep telling me there's all sorts of various tools out there to
Yeah.
condense them, but
Yeah.
I just don't get on with any of them. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'll suck
Yeah.
it up that it's going to
Yeah.
be
Exactly.
hours worth of letting it run. And I'm sure I might even leave this bit in actually now, like crowdsource from listeners to be like, someone
Yes.
tell me what it is I'm doing wrong. And I'm sure the
Yeah.
answer will be a lot of podcast producers reaching out to me trying to flog me their services because they
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
better, probably. They won't be wrong.
But
But
it's
we are
raw.
here.
It's you. It's what people want to see. So I'm here.
Exactly, exactly. And we are here to talk about stress. That is my particular stress in the workplace.
Yes. Yes.
But tell me, because I'm always really curious, and I didn't want to. I'm about to say I didn't want to jump in with this straight away, but here I am jumping in with it straight away, because I kind of feel like is going for something to be completely stress free
Yeah.
too optimistic? Like, is it possible, or are we really aiming for like slightly less stress, which
Okay.
isn't as catchy?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yes. I mean, well, that's the first point. Spot the marketing point. Stress free is, and no, you're. It's a really good question because no, actually, it is physically impossible to be stress free. And the reason for that is, which will perhaps lead us down a rabbit hole, which hopefully we'll go down anyway, is we have a misconception of what stress is at the moment, and we tend to think stress is uploading videos to YouTube, or the kids not doing as they're told, or whatever else it is that's sort of irritating more than stress. When in reality, stress is something that is placed on the body or in the body or changes the body out of what we would call homeostasis, which is a really fancy word, but it's basically, so for instance, the obvious one is gravity. So gravity is a stressor on the body. We'd be pretty messed up if we didn't have it because we'd all be floating around everywhere. But it is still a stressor on the body. So can we be stress free? Absolutely not. But can a workplace be stress free? It's technically, I suppose, it's possible, but yeah, it is one of those sort of play on words a little bit, but yeah,
Mm.
sounds an awful lot better than stress less. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, no one's aiming, are they? For like,
no,
we'd like less
absolutely
stress. Like that's not quantifiable. Stress free is always a goal, isn't it?
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
absolutely.
suppose it's the same in I want to create workplaces that are completely inclusive, which
Yeah.
also is the goal.
Yes.
But I guess what's the word I'm looking for? It's contextual and fluctuating, isn't it?
Yes.
We
Yes.
cannot, as you say, the homeostasis thing. It's like we cannot permanently achieve a state of being where we will always
Mm.
have no stress or
Yeah.
no, like, that's just not going to happen. So
Correct. Yeah.
so when this is something that you're helping people work with, what are
Yeah.
the types of things? Because I'm thinking listeners are going to be listening to this going, okay, right, we get it, can't be totally stress free.
Yeah.
A, then what's possible, and B, what are the signs I can be looking out for opportunities to be stressed less? Like, what are the things that can come up and you'll be like, oh yeah, we can get rid of that?
Okay, so I think the easiest one really, which people overlook all the time, is that actually simply recognizing your stress reduces the impact of that stress on the body. So, and again, this would then tip into something, akin to mindfulness or other sorts of practices like that. But just recognizing that at this point in time, what are the stresses on our body? Or, when you're walking through the office door, what stresses are you bringing with you? What things are bothering you? And again, the word stress can sometimes be misleading or can lead us to an assumptive path to what we're talking about. But it's, what is bothering you? What's on your mind? What's taking up your bandwidth? And also physical, mental, emotional as well. So this isn't just a brain thing, stress on the body, load on the body can be physical. So if you're a gym user and you go and overtrain, or you start a new workout and you wake up the next day and you've got the muscle soreness and everything else,
I feel really seen when you said that. I was like, oh, that's me.
but it's that thing of actually at that point you have more stress in your body than is good for you, and that will be taking up bandwidth. So
Mm.
the first point to answer your question is just recognizing what it is and go, okay, I'm having a moment now where my brain is doing something, my body is doing something. Take and what do we then do? Probably take a deep breath. It's a good place to start. And sort of then go, okay, no, I can work with this. I know this is a thing. So that's from an individual point of view, and then from a company's point of view with the client side, it's understanding what employees are getting stressed about or what is bothering, employees. And it can be silly things like the coffee machine. Right now, as the temperature's just changed, who has control of the thermostat in the office? Who sits closer to the radiator? These are big deals, and they
Yeah.
create a lack of productivity because while your brain is thinking about how irritated you are by, whoever it may be that's sort of controlling that, what you're not doing is thinking about the work that you should be doing.
Mm.
And these are, so
I love that those are actual, all of those examples you've given that are actually real world things that I have encountered in my career
yeah,
in certainly in HR, dealing with people. And the office temperature one, I'm certain there will be so many people that that resonates with, because
yeah,
generally someone's frozen, generally someone's got the heater on under their desk, haven't they, their
yeah,
own little
yeah,
store, like
yeah,
little mini fan blower thing. I've seen that
mm,
so many times. Or the person that's always got their cardi on, and then
yeah,
there's some poor other person, usually a man or a menopausal woman, who's kind of like at the
yeah,
other end of that spectrum.
yes,
and
yeah,
and generally I guess that happens because I think increasingly now in workplaces, actually we're in open plan offices. It's like
mm,
one temperature across the entire place.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um
mm,
and that's, yeah, and I guess it's worth thinking, isn't it, about, well, when we create these working environments, how are we
mm.
planning the ways in which people will be working in those
Yeah, yeah.
environments?
And if
Yeah.
and if you've got desk, you don't have your own desk, I can't remember what the phrase is off the top of my head, but you go in and you have that desk. People like their space, don't they? They like to be in a
Yeah.
certain place.
Yeah.
And there are people, and I'm sure there are studies out there that prove that if you move people around, that adds an edge. But I
Yep.
think to other people, it causes stress, if they can't get in for whatever reason, and there'll be a multitude of reasons.
Completely. And
So
that's hot desking that I
art
think you're
desking, that's the
yeah.
phrase I was looking for. Yeah.
And actually, I would also add to that as well, because this is something that has come up on previous versions when I talk to people about neurodiversity,
Mm,
particularly for people who might
mm,
be autistic, that if you are
mm.
constantly having to be uncertain about where your things are, where you're going to sit,
Yeah.
which part of the office that you're going to be in, and therefore what's the lighting like, what's the noise like,
Yeah.
hugely stressful,
Mm, mm,
hugely
yeah,
impactful.
yeah, yeah,
So absolutely, I think that's a really key one. Well, key one there as
yeah.
well.
Mm,
And you said something as well, which I really like, when you were talking about kind of noticing was the word I looked down, and
yeah,
you said noticing kind of in ourselves around, okay, what are we doing in work and what are we bringing into work,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
noticing as an employer about, well, what's going on for our people, so noticing us and noticing each other.
Exactly, exactly. And that's a really interesting point. And a question I get asked an awful lot is that, we are focusing on workplace stress, but there's as often as a reluctance to talk about home-based stress or, and everything else. But, my answer to that is always, well, you tell me how easy, if you've got somebody that's struggling to live life at 8 o'clock in the morning, how likely is it they're going to walk into the office at 9 o'clock in the morning and be your A-star employee? It doesn't happen. You've got to create a human being that's walking into the office or getting into the office or sitting down at their desk at home or whatever, in a relatively good state in the first place, because they're not
Yeah.
suddenly just going to click their fingers
Yeah.
and go down that route. So, and I think what's interesting, to come back to your neurodiversity point, and I've been thinking this through in preparation for our chat, because it works in my head. Whether it comes out this way, I don't know. But what's interesting about stress or loads on the body, which is similar, I think, has a similarity to neurodiversity, is that no one stress is received the same by the same people, by different people. Sorry. So what is hugely stressful for one person doesn't even, sort of flick the radar on somebody else, and vice versa. And
Hmm.
equally, it can be, different days of the week, times of the year, days of the month, whatever it might be, whether there's sort
Yeah.
of cycles in there. So, and that's where life becomes really quite challenging, because there's no fixed thing you can do. Yes, if the company, if you do your wellbeing audit for the company and the coffee machine comes up as a big irritant, change the coffee machine. That's relatively straightforward. But actually, a day-to-day management of the stresses in the body, and therefore the stresses in the office and in the group, it's a fluid thing that
Mm.
needs skills to be able to recognize, to evaluate, but also then address in a sort of in a way that actually is conducive to being in the office. It may not be that you can sit down and do a 20-minute meditation, because you might have
Yeah.
phones to answer or something like that. But what can
Yeah.
you do to just bring those levels down a little bit regularly, that can actually help to maintain ability to function, whilst also, bringing the stress levels down?
Mm. Now, I already know that you will have a wellbeing audit that you do for organizations to help them identify what these things might be. But
Yeah,
before I ask you about that, and I ask you
yeah,
to give up all the goods, because we are only very early doors in this
yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
I really am curious to know, how did you get into this work? Because I wonder if it's similar in that in inclusion work, I didn't wake up one day thinking, oh, I'm going to work in inclusion. Like, that wasn't my goal through school.
Mm,
Right. So I'm
mm.
wondering, perhaps that was similar for you. You didn't come out of school thinking stress is where I need to be
Yeah, this is
working.
where I want to be. Yeah, give me stress to deal with. No, absolutely not. And I'll give you the speedy long version, if that works.
Yeah, let's do it.
People tend to find it quite interesting. So my school days dreams was I wanted to fly planes and play rugby for England. And short version is I did neither of those. Although I came fairly close to doing both. So I had a 10-year career in what turned out to be the RAF Regiment, which is basically the sort of the infantry unit for the mobile air assets. But also then played professional rugby for about 10 years, give or take. If people want to date me, around and about 2003 was the peak of my career, which was when the England rugby team won the World Cup. So my career was with and against all of those guys. But both of those are young men's games, or young women's games nowadays, very much so. And my body retired me from rugby, I always say, and my marriage retired me from the Air Force. So it was time to start something new. And chance conversation with an old friend. I like health, I like people. So I ended up going into the personal training world, the health and fitness world, but always with a view to going into rehabilitation, which started off as spinal rehabilitation, bad backs, gym-based initially, then clinically, then multidisciplinary teams, pre-post-op work, very much down a rabbit hole there of sort of getting people strong and sort of posturally fit and flexible. Um, but as happens in so many walks of life, as you get good at that, somebody brings with you a related but slightly different problem. So lower back became the neck became the shoulder. But also I studied with an institute based in San Diego. So I did a sort of 7-year internship with them. And they were very much, as you probably would expect from California, very much about holistic health. And so we studied the interactions of the digestive system with the musculoskeletal system, with the nervous system. And the way I tell the story is it's easier with my gym-based clients. So in the gym environment, we were dealing with low back pain in the general population, and doing muscles and joints and posture and the sort of the standard stuff you would do in the gym. I probably got about 60% success rate, which wasn't bad. But my sort of sports background was like, well, that means I'm losing 40% of the time. Well, what can I do to increase that? And so as I then did my studies and we start to look at the digestive system, those 40% that aren't responding, you then start asking questions. It says, well, what's your digestion? Do you have issues with sort of bowel issues or IBS or, celiac disease or things like that, or food allergies? And guess what? A lot of them did. And so you then do some gut cleanse work and you freshen up the gut, and then that 60% probably goes to 70, 75%. And then you think, okay, well, I've still got 25%. What's going on with them? And then again, as you learn more and you get more into human health and the sort of the system of systems that the body is, you start looking at mental emotional health. And then start asking questions on the chakra system of sort of traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, looks at energy centers and their mental emotional connection to parts of the body. So the lower back is connected to feelings about safety, security, but also relationships and gender. So then start asking questions about, people's, questions in that. And you become more skilled as you go. You start off feeling really vulnerable because you don't really know what you're asking, but I had the training to do it, but it's a weird thing. And very often I'd be in a room as a kind of 35, 36-year-old guy with a single female, and you're starting to ask questions where you're like, this could go badly if I'm not careful. But it didn't, fortunately, because what happened was, of those sort of 25%, you'd then get another, I don't know, 15% that would suddenly go, oh yeah, there's something in there. And you help them clear that, or you refer them to somebody to clear that. And the reason I sort of tell it on that way is because that gives you an idea of how to relate sort of human function and how humans sort of connect mind, body, spirit. And that became important because as I progressed then, I ended up with clients that had got so many things wrong with them, so deep rooted, been around for so long, you couldn't possibly do one ailment at a time. So it was, what I ended up doing was flicking the model on its head. The model used to be fix the injury and then get them healthy so it didn't come back. Then the model, I flipped it on its head, so well, let's get you healthy first and see what's left. And then COVID came, which was fun. Not really, I was fully in-person business, one-to-one. We just got shut down. It was there was no joy in that at all. But coming out of COVID, people had, some colleagues of mine had opportunities to grow their teams and their businesses, and the conversation sort of came about where it's like, I've got the opportunities, I've got the business there, but I know I'll break the team if I'd go for all of this. So I've got the choice: do I keep the team or risk breaking them, or take the opportunities? And we then sort of turned out, I sort of had a conversation and started doing that kind of resilience stress work, and to help them get more capacity in the team and to be able to tolerate the extra load they were going to have to go through to grow. And the short version of that is they took the opportunities, and that was back in kind of 2022. And so that grew what is now the stress-free workplace strategy. So it is about dealing with stress, but stress, mind, body, spirit, physical, mental, emotional, nutritional, thermal, all of that, in order to help organizations or employees or companies create more output in whatever way they
Yeah.
want to.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so interesting because isn't it fascinating how that kind of evolution of thinking, the progression of thinking from simply treating injuries and physical wellness to actually humans holistically and all of the
Yeah.
things that we think, feel, experience, and
Yeah.
how they all shape how we conduct our lives, right? How we
Mm.
experience
Mm.
our lives, how we interact with each other.
Yeah.
And I love that you've turned that into something that you're also helping organizations as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really liked that you were kind of calling out that you noticed around a lot of this does involve having quite vulnerable conversations with people. Like,
Mm.
you're
Mm.
asking people to maybe engage in a way that they wouldn't have engaged previously, especially when you flip that model on its head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
come in thinking, well, I've got a bad back, and you're going to say
Yeah.
to me, yeah, but how are your relationships?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's an interesting one. Yeah, you get some sideways glances. So, and I mean, I'm sort of going much more down my sort of health and fitness, or a healthy human. But my other sort of three-line mantra is healthy high performance. But the reality is every living thing wants to be healthy. Human beings are the most evolved species on the planet, but we're also the sickest. So we're doing something wrong. So I often see my job, and this is with individuals, but also with organizations, is helping people get out their own way. Let the body do the healing for you. And particularly when you're dealing with multiple issues and things that have been around an awful long time, it's like, well, just give it the basics, get out your way and see what happens. And usually good stuff happens. So,
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Now,
yeah.
I'm just very quickly, I'm going to close my window because
Okay.
I started our conversation talking to Jim, telling you about how sweltering I am and the fact that I'm regretting my choices putting a jumper on when the sun's now come out. But someone's just started digging something up outside,
Okay.
and I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
Zoom will pick it up.
Right.
But just in case,
Yeah.
And the other thing, just to make my listeners aware of, is Teapot, my cat, who is a regular appearer on the
Yes.
podcast, has now arrived.
Right.
So she's sat on the floor currently, but
Okay.
we'll see what happens there. So
Yeah.
exciting things to look forward to.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing, and I think it's hugely insightful and just in how to pull together, yeah, the whole human, healthy human ways of
Yeah.
experiencing things.
Mm.
So if that's kind of how you got into it and now how you are working now and what you've kind of progressed that into.
Yeah.
So tell us now then about this wellbeing audit that you do. So how that now translates into the work that you do with companies.
Yeah, so in essence, that's the opportunity to start a conversation, usually with senior leaders, usually with business owners, about the impact of well-being on their organization. Because let's not beat around the bush. They want to know if it's going to make them a better organization, in whatever way. Sometimes it's because they want to look after their staff well, and that's the only driver, which is fantastic. But usually there's a kind of profit and loss angle in there
Yep.
as well, which is fine. Businesses need to make money.
And
Um,
also, like, people are, as we know, our biggest asset and our biggest cost.
exactly.
Right.
So we ask questions about absenteeism rates. We ask questions about the cost of absenteeism rates, and it's a really interesting one when you ask people if they know how much it costs or know how many days they have, but then they perhaps don't know how much it costs. They know if are they confident that their staff members would be open to deal with a mental well-being issue or even a physical well-being issue in the workplace. Do they know what's going on for each of their staff outside of work? So who may be bringing baggage into the office. So it's because all of that has an impact on the organization, but the employee's ability to get in and do their job well. And productivity is an interesting one, isn't it? How do you measure that in an awful lot of cases? But absenteeism is really easy, and turnover of staff is really easy. And I've heard some of your other combinations where if you ask the wrong question, you just get told, well, it's for money, but it's rarely for money. It's more because, and that I think the conversation I was listening to this morning was talking about if you've got friends, if you've got people you connect with in an organization, then you like to stay there for longer.
Yep.
And that's a values piece, and that's a
Yep.
well-being piece, because if company values match an individual's values, they'll buy into what you're doing and they'll stick with you for an awful long time.
Totally support that. And as a build as well, things that I am certainly observing in conversations that are taking place is, well, two things actually. People from marginalized backgrounds, if they find somewhere that it feels safe and healthy and happy that they can contribute and enjoy
Yeah,
work,
yeah.
definitely going to be more loyal, not going to start looking for other jobs because you don't know what your alternatives are. And also, if we think about the new generation of workforce, coming through, people are way more motivated by values now
Yes.
than they ever were. And I don't want to say that that's limited to younger people, because I think they may have started to challenge workplace norms to make us more aware about values-based working. And I think that's rubbing off on a lot of other people that are thinking, oh yeah, do you know what?
Yeah.
That is better. We've got people that at all spaces of age ranges saying, I don't need to, or I don't need to come to work for the money. I need to feel something when I'm here. I need to know the contribution I'm making, or I need
Yeah.
to kind of I want to go home, not a completely grumpy
Yeah.
bugger.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
impacting everybody.
Yeah. And I think, and it's that sort of feeling, when you're in a place with shared values, because it feels good and it feels
Yeah.
right. But often not that many people I come across actually know what their values are and have spent time to go through that. Not enough companies have done that to actually sort of stress,
Agreed.
well, what are your core values? What do you stand for? And so actually part of the process of creating a better workplace and a stress less or stress free workplace is to actually go, well, let's do that. Let's have the company values and then let's do an individual one and we'll see where we match up. And in the vast majority of companies I work with, they match up quite well. But that realization creates another bond between the employee and the employer, and they understand why they're in a good place. And I think likewise, you know it when you're in the wrong place because it doesn't feel right. But actually being able to process and turn into logic that feeling, that understanding of why it doesn't feel right is a really powerful thing. For employees to be able to do and sort of beneficial for the companies.
Completely. And I loved what you were kind of drawing upon there around that kind of values piece, in that there is likely to be a lot of alignment in that people will naturally gravitate towards organizations that fill those, but infrequently will we do the work to identify what that specifically is.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
act of doing that not only allows you to identify it, but then that becomes a really great employee value proposition, right? Because then you can
Mm.
use that to your
Yeah,
advantage.
yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Amazing. Okay, so if that's kind of the how you got into this and what you're doing,
yeah.
so where do ultimately do you want to see this going? How in an ideal world do you think, putting this effort in now?
Mm.
Oh, and I've just remembered another question I didn't ask you because I didn't write it down. Um, in an ideal world, where
Yeah.
can we go with this? And then perhaps before you answer that,
Okay, right, go on
you
then.
mentioned about the cost, didn't you, to
Yes,
organizations? So just
yes.
briefly, on average, what is the cost of people not, like per person, of people not taking action on this?
So I'm not sure about average, but I think we're talking at the moment. I think the average it's sort of like 13.7 million lost working days a year, which is I think equates to about 45 billion pound. And 54% of that is all down to workplace stress. So those are kind of the key stats that are in play. Now, what I do with companies is we look at how many days absence have you got, and we look at, can you roughly work that out? And again, if they've got the salary costs, you can do it relatively quickly, and then multiply a day's wages across the business by the number of days you're losing, multiply that by 0.54, and that tells you what you're losing to workplace stress, which is quite nice because that's almost always significantly higher than the cost of my program. So that
Yeah,
works.
exactly.
So
Easily quantifiable. And
yeah,
actually, and I like that's an equation that people can do like right now, actually,
yeah,
can't they? Look at
yeah,
the cost of your absence
mm,
on your business.
yeah.
And then if, yeah, 54% of that is down to
Workplace
stress.
stress, then
Yep, brilliant.
that's what it's costing
Then
you. So does it cost you less to fix it than it does to suffer it? Well, it probably does, but it's your choice. It's
yeah, and that's what
yeah,
we're here for. We're here for educated choices, right? We want
yeah.
to be informed decision makers
Mm,
going forward. Awesome. Right. Thank you
good.
for answering that, because I think that was
That's
a
fine.
really key thing to help people latch on to how
Yes.
important this is. So now I'm going to go back to, like, in the ideal world, if we did all of this work, what would happen? Where would that take us? Why is this
So
so important?
that's a very timely question. So if you had asked me this, I don't know, 3, 4 weeks ago, I would have said my sort of purpose in life is to help people understand how they can live happy, healthy lives with energy and vibrancy. So that's my individual purpose. So everything I do has got that kind of drive behind it. But in terms of, it's really about helping companies to give their employees ownership of their own health, because we've all got our own bodies, and we're the only people that can control those bodies. What happens to your body is all down to you. You might get hit by a car and all the rest of it, but generally speaking, it's all on you. And most people don't really understand how little things make a massive impact, and it becomes daunting. And there's so much information out there that actually it leads to people doing nothing. We don't need information. What we actually need is kind of inspiration and action. So what do I want to achieve with this is to help people understand how they can do one or two or three things. If they do that consistently, that can make a massive difference in their life. And if they do that in a workforce, and it can transform the output and the energy and the buzz in a workplace, by giving people that energy back, that we're all tired, rejected on sugar, rejected on coffee, and all the rest of it now. Often when you say that, people are, I don't want to give up coffee, I don't want to give up sugar. You don't have to, and that again is one of my key messages, that often people think you've got to go to the gym, or you've got to drink water, or go on a diet and all this stuff. You don't. And the key part of our program is to help people understand what is stressing them, but also what things they might want to do to reduce that stress. And because the body is this holistic entity, you can be really stressed out by financial worries, but go for a walk to relax it. Walking is not going to change your financial worries, but it's going to help you balance that stress out just a little bit. So that's sort of one of the key messages in terms of what I want to spread. But then the other idea I've had in the last month, which I'm kind of fleshing out at the moment, is to actually create sort of stress busters in the office. We've got mental health first aiders, and at the moment, and we've got first aiders at the moment. but actually let's have something that is just to do with connecting that sort of workplace stress that's going in. So I'm kind of kicking that around. I'm sort of running it through with a few sort of trusted clients to see what they think of the idea and what it might look like. And then the benefit I think with that, really, whereas at the moment I like to deliver to the employees, what I could do then is deliver to the stress busters, and they can then deliver and take it. So it probably allows me to reach bigger organizations as well, in a more cost-effective manner. So
I really love that as an idea because it's also giving more agency to an organization as well, isn't it?
yeah,
Which is rather
yeah,
than just kind of I come in and I'm only speaking to the group of employees that you currently have. It's kind of
yeah,
enabling the longevity of how do you keep this alive? How do you keep
yeah,
the attention on it? So it's
yeah,
long-term
absolutely.
goals. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that. And I liked what you were saying as well around like it, people just assume it's going to be go for a walk, drink water.
yeah,
Like, and actually, like you said, those things are beneficial. And as human beings, obviously physically, like we're made of water, so we should
we are
probably drink water.
generally considered a good idea.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say so.
Yeah.
However, what I'm hearing and what you were saying there, it's taking it away from like you say, away from being like dependent on coffee to get through your day because you're exhausted, to
Mm,
choose to drink coffee if coffee is what you like,
mm,
but
yeah.
make it a conscious choice of something that you want because you want it, rather
Yeah.
than if you
Yeah.
don't have your morning coffee, you're likely to tear off your colleague's head, when they
Exactly.
ask a
Yeah. Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, and you find people. I think the best one I had. I'm going to chuck my own mother under the bus here, but the best one I had was my mum. And as ever in this line of work, mum wants to lose a bit of weight or get a bit healthier, so you get dragged in. And I think she was racking up about 24 cups of coffee in a day, and I was like, Mum, which one's the nicest? She went, I haven't got a clue. And I've done this now many times, and I said, well, I've got a little exercise for you. I want you to go, and I want you to go around every single coffee shop you can find and try the coffee and mark it and grade it, because she just wasn't tasting it. It was just a habit. But I think the sort of the other point with that is it's really when you're asking, human behavior change is massively difficult. It's the most challenging thing anybody can do. So if I'm stood in front of a group and I'm saying, right, let's all choose something to do. Well, again, I'm stating the obvious here, but if they choose something they might quite like to do, they might be engaged with, then there's a bigger chance that they're actually going to do it. You have your cat. So, and that's a sort of really, a really sort of important part, that it doesn't have to always be pushing water uphill. So, if you'll excuse the pun, but often if you can find something you want to engage in, you're more likely to do. That starts the ball rolling, and that gets momentum. And once you've got a bit of momentum, it's easier to add something else in, and then something else in. But starting straight off with something really hard very rarely lasts.
Absolutely. Well, for me, in hearing you say that, it sounds just a lot like fad diets, doesn't it? Like we get on board, we hit it really hard, we do it massively, it works for 2 weeks, and then we've all given up
Yeah,
and gone back to
exactly.
whatever it is we were doing before, because actually that was our habit, that was
Yeah,
our behavior, and we were
yeah,
just
mm,
dancing with something new
yeah,
as a bit of a gimmick. And
yeah.
actually what I'm hearing from you is it's actually small things that become new habits that actually become part of our behavior, that are sustainable and lead
Absolutely.
to happier, healthier
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah. I
And for
mean,
those of you,
if you're talking to somebody about weight loss, and again, obviously this is not really the sort of the workplace theme, but somebody says, oh, I want, I've only lost a pound this week. It's like, all right, but do that for 52 weeks. How much does
yeah,
that equal? That's a
yeah,
lot of weight,
that's a lot. Yeah.
So, and, oh yeah, didn't think about it that way. A year is not a long period of time, but a pound a week for 52 weeks is an awful lot of weight. So,
Absolutely. And also, what is sustainable for our bodies to handle as
yeah,
well. Again,
yeah,
coming back to, do you want something long term that will make you feel better going forwards,
mm,
or do you just want the quick result?
yeah.
And often as humans we are guilty, aren't we, of like we love a quick result,
Oh
we
yeah,
love the
yeah.
shortcut, we want the immediate payoff.
Mm,
I mean, I
mm,
guess this is why we all have credit cards, isn't it? It's so that we can
yeah,
have the big thing that we couldn't afford
yeah.
now, because we
Mm,
don't want to spend 6 months saving up for it.
mm,
We'd rather have it now and pay it off over 6 months. So
yeah.
we're challenged against our mindsets, aren't we?
We are for
Um,
sure. Mm,
and this is why it's important to have support, to know that, well, if that's going to be our default position, we
yeah,
need people that can advise us and help us and keep us accountable.
yeah, and I think what's also really important is that we, these big changes that we want to make, they're a stress on the body. So that's just adding another load in. So again, if we're looking at it from a workplace point of view, if you've got somebody that's doing a fad diet once a month, probably for a 1 week a month, which is 25% of the year, they're not going to be terribly productive
Mm.
because they're just dealing with an extra load they don't need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, it comes back again, doesn't it, to the, the things that we have going on outside of work are definitely things that we then bring into work. We can't
Yeah,
help it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome stuff. Right. For those of the people that are watching on YouTube, you'll see that Teapot has now joined us on the desk. So I'm now bracing myself for everything to be wiped off, because that seems to be her current mindset, because she's a joy like that. So thank you. So given everything that we've talked about so far, is there anything, Jim, that you really want people to know or to understand that you haven't had an opportunity to say yet? What are some of the critical things that you think people should be thinking of?
So from an individual's point of view, one of the things I'm really passionate about helping people to understand is that the number of things, I'm going to make sure my hand's on the screen here, the number of things that people can stress is huge. So it's, loads and loads. We'd be here over 2 hours if we tried to list all the different stresses, strains, loads on the body, everything across the physical realm, the mental realm, the nutritional realm, the thermogenic realm, and all of those different things. And then likewise, on the other side of it, we've equally got so many different things that we can do to reduce those stresses. And as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be a direct like for like. So you don't have to go and sort of cut your spending down if you've got financial worries. It helps, obviously, but there's ways you can limit the stress impact that's having. But what's really interesting is, although you've got these two big areas either side, right in the middle, you've got one single reaction of how the human body reacts to stress. Okay, in terms of your release of adrenaline, and then your more damaging, your long-term release of cortisol. And that is hugely damaging to an individual's health, being in that highly stressed state, day in, day out, week in, week out. And so that's that can change. And again, I've been dealing with a lady today, or seeing a client this morning, and she now realizes that stress is the biggest blocker to her getting healthy. And so we have to have some fairly hard conversations. But that's that single reaction that's critical, and getting on top of that, and the different ways you can do to get on top of that. But then from a company's point of view, or an organization's point of view, it's to see the power of having somebody who has a breakthrough in their own self, and what that then brings to the office. And these breakthroughs can be with people understanding their values, perhaps, or it could be somebody, I've many times in the office environment where people have had a slightly quirky relationship with food, and we just help them have a little bit of a moment where that improves. The best one so far was one of the earliest ones I did, where the lady in question was actually, on that sort of, oh, we might need to, she's not performing, she's got a lot of sickness. We need to see if we can do something, otherwise we have to have some horrible conversations. And she had a real light bulb moment in the course of understanding a little bit more about how nourishment to her body might actually impact her sleep, and therefore her ability to get up for a day's work the next day. And I did that 3-4 years ago, and she's still there now. So it's that ability to give your employees the power to make themselves more productive, and wanting connecting better with their business, so that they, like I said, they want to come in, they want to keep doing the work, and they're driving your business forward, driving your profits up.
Absolutely. And that's the critical thing, isn't it? Everything is connected.
Mm.
Everything is connected, inside, outside of work, the way, our sleep, our eating, our everything
Yeah,
is connected.
yeah.
And I just want to come back, because twice now you've used the term thermogenic.
Yeah, so heat, anything
Explain
to
that.
do with heat. So, when temperature, or either internal temperature. So again, you mentioned menopausal women before. They'll know all about that.
I
But
mention it a
equally,
lot because it is me.
yeah, I live with one of those as well. Yes, so outside temperature when it's going down at the moment. So yeah, that's really all it means. It means temperature. So
Okay, so is this when if we start thinking about, actually, because we talked as well about cyclical feelings of stress,
yeah.
and I'm wondering as well then if this is like when we have the seasons change, and people, is it sad that seasonal
Yeah,
affective?
seasonal affective disorder.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
we'll
that has an
sort of
impact
start to
as
talk.
well.
That'll have an impact. Yeah. And yeah, but also that will affect different. And that's a great example of something that will affect one person really badly, and another person not at all. And again, we need to know these things to be able to and keep those people engaged in the office and in the workspace, and feeling valued. Because it is a real thing that if if you get it right, you can make a real difference to somebody.
Yeah.
Um, so
And I'm also thinking now actually as well about other types of transitions that happen in workplaces, because obviously we've got the cyclical human transitions, the
yeah.
seasonal transitions because of external
Mm.
factors. I'm also thinking there will be like geopolitical events and things that will trigger moments of stress for people that I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of workplaces are handling right now.
Well, I was going to say exactly that. I mean, we've got some sort of budget coming up in the not too distant future. Every business owner I speak to at the moment is referencing that. That's, and that will trickle down. I mean, the other thing, probably a longer cycle, but the influx of AI in the business is causing concern. It's causing stress, in a workforce for any number of different reasons. And so these are all things that need to be recognized. And some of them are positive things that will end up ultimately positive. But if we don't address them, if we don't recognize them first and foremost, we don't even know they're in play.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the conversations I end up having with my clients, which is we, pay attention to everything
Mm,
because it impacts people, whether you directly link it to the impact on your business or not. For
mm,
example, one of the conversations we have a lot at the moment around political, the geopolitical kind of wars essentially that are going on around
mm,
the world, which is we've got populations of people that are, impacted greatly in
mm,
this.
mm.
And if you think that stress isn't coming into your workplace,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's because people are masking it and they are bearing the extra
Mm,
load that you talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
to
exactly.
not try and let it affect their work. But my goodness, it
Mm,
is. It's got to
mm.
be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember, I don't know why I particularly remember this, but back at the start of the Ukraine war, and then, we had a lot of obviously Ukrainians come over to the UK, and there were people were talking about the fact they didn't know whether their relatives were still alive or whether their building had been bombed. You try disassociating that from, going into work and doing whatever you need to do. It's not going to happen. Or it's not going to happen without a certain amount of recognition and help
Yeah. Yeah.
from the employers. Yeah.
And I think that's actually one of the key things, isn't it? That we're not saying it's the responsibility of there are no collective of employers that are going to be able to go, oh, do you know what? We're not a fan of genocide. I think our organization can stop that. That's not what we're saying, is it? What we're
No.
saying is how are you listening to, paying attention, and just acknowledging that
Mm.
for your people
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they're feeling it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the stresses people experience, and like I say, all the temperature ones. There's very little a company can do about it.
Yeah.
If somebody's having have an argument with the other half first thing in the morning, it's not the company's responsibility. But if the company can help that person deal with that better, then the company
Yeah.
benefits. Um,
Yeah.
so
And a lot of the time it can just have employees that feel psychologically safe enough to come to work and say to their line manager or someone in their team,
mm,
I had a right row this morning.
yeah.
It's knocked me a bit.
Mm.
It might take me a few minutes and a coffee
Yes,
to
exactly.
like
Yeah,
get back in
yeah,
my stride.
yeah. Where's that decent coffee machine that we just had? Put it in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
People underestimate it, but they're very important.
they are. They are. So.
Yeah. I was just thinking about other types of transition as well, then around actually, we're talking a lot about how employers support like their current and existing workforce, but also, I mean, evidence, I would imagine, is if you can evidence how you're doing that, that is then going to help the pipeline of people that want to work with you, because you will have lots of examples to talk about the ways in which you support people.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I suppose it can also help for a lot of them. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations are going through redundancy rounds, aren't they?
mm, mm.
And I'm sure that there is support then for people, specific support that people will need who are then exiting
Yeah,
organizations as
yeah.
well.
And again, it's a pretty stressful period when go into a redundancy. But yeah, I think from an employee retention tool, workplace culture, healthy workplace culture is more and more important. It is something now that the younger generation are stating as, yes, they want to be paid for what they're doing, but it's nowhere near the be all and end all. As they want a lot more than that. They want meaning, they want a connection to the wider thing, and they want, a healthy workplace culture.
Yeah, I think we should not underestimate the how critical this is and will continue to be, because
Mm.
yeah, it's definitely up there, for sure. So I can imagine people are listening to this thinking, okay, there's a lot that Jim knows. We need more conversations.
Yes.
How can people get hold of you if this is a conversation they want to take forward with you?
Website, email, LinkedIn, are the normal channels.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got a web form on the website. That's be having a bit of work done to it at the moment, but that'll be, the contact form still works even now. My email address is on the screen, so jim@jtethos.com, as is my phone number. So yeah, it's just start the conversation and see where we go. I mean, I deal with companies, and I work with them. We do the audit. We go in for a sort of strategy day, and that's about it. It doesn't take much more than that. They're in a pretty good place. It's a fairly quick and simple engagement. There are others, obviously, where there's a bit more work to do, and where companies want to do a bit more work. So it's quite, it's a very fluid process, but it all starts with a conversation and the audit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? The first step is to reach out and just have a chat with you to see if the things that they're experiencing or they think they're experiencing, because that's the
Yes.
other thing, isn't it? There's the
Yes.
things we think that are happening, and actually when you do a root cause analysis, there's
Yeah.
other things that come up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for those people that aren't watching on YouTube, so are listening audio only on this and can't see Jim's details, don't worry, I'll pop his email address and telephone number in the show notes, so you can, if you are driving, don't worry, you can access it later. And your website, I'm assuming then will be, is it jtethos.com?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That's the one.
Awesome. So people can find you using that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
LinkedIn, are you a
I am a
social media
LinkedIn,
person?
yes. I get caught out because it goes 2 or 3 days before, and then there's loads of notifications and messages. I'm like, oh dear. So yes, I'm improving with LinkedIn. So
Excellent
yes.
work. So perhaps if people aren't ready to reach, so if people are ready to reach out, definitely do that directly. If they're not
yeah.
ready, they can come and lurk on your sporadic
Yes.
LinkedIn usage and
Yes.
encourage
Yeah.
you to be there more.
Yes, and they definitely won't be spammed by me. It won't be something coming through
Perfect.
every day. So there's a bit
Yeah.
of, they can be relaxed on that one. So
Excellent stuff.
for
Okie
now,
dokie.
anyway. So
Jim, is there any final parting words that you would like to share with our viewers and listeners before we bring this baby into land?
um I guess this is going to sound a bit sort of woo woo. I'll use that word. So for one, which I know
Thank
is a
you.
favourite of yours, but it is about the fact that health, we have health in all of us, and it's there. We're born with it, okay, and it's still there. Right up until the day we die. It's kind of within us to choose how much we want, and we can choose as much or as little as we want. And from an individual point of view, I love working with people who want to choose more. And so with a company, people that, companies that want to, want to have employees that choose more. It is a choice. It's not for everybody, but, I love it, and I love sharing it.
Choose health is where we're
Choose
going.
health. Yes.
Choose health. Love that.
Yes.
What a brilliant way to end. And actually, I'm just going to say thank you for the shout out. What the woo woo that Jim was referring to then is he is literally, before joining me, was listening to my previous episode of Woo Woo in the Workplace with Cheryl
Yes.
Thornton. So
Yes.
love that. How dedicated are my
Yes.
guests? It's amazing.
It took me right back to my California learnings. It's wonderful. So
Excellent stuff. Good,
yeah.
good. Jim Thorp, thank you so much for joining me on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. It's been an absolute delight to speak to you.
My pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you very much.